Melissa McCue McGrath. She lives in Maine, which isn't that far from Vermont. I intend to hang out with this woman because I've read this book of hers, Misadventures of the World's Okayest Dog Trainer, which has a picture on the cover of a dog lifting his leg into a cup of coffee, which is quite a feat. Although at one point in the book, you do talk about a whale being trained to pee in a cup and why that's proof that we shouldn't use shock collars on dogs. Before we talk about you and the fact that this book is a sheer delight as a memoir, forget the dog training, but you can't forget it because it's central to you, who you are, how you've lived, and what the book's about. What about the whale peeing in a cup? You know so much stuff because you have a degree in being smart about stuff, right?
Oh, goodness. That is the nicest intro I've ever received. So, my degree is in psychology, but I think more than that, like I grew up undiagnosed ADHD, which means I hear a thing and I make a weird connection to it. And so, if you read this book, it's almost like being in the head of a woman with ADHD, which
Oh,
is
yeah.
so undiagnosed, chronically undiagnosed to women. But like when I'm talking about like I can train your Wheaten Terrier to sit politely for a nail trim using a clicker or my voice or reinforcers, there's no reason we need to use alpha rolling. Try alpha rolling a whale, it's not going to work. And like we have, not me personally, I have not, but we, the royal we, have trained
Yes.
whales to pee in a cup for medical exams, which is
Wow.
freaking cool. And if we can do that with a clicker and salmon, I promise you, you can get your Chewini to pee outside. Like,
Nice. I love it. And the book is full of these kind of, I guess because in reading the book early on, I realized, oh, she just described my brain. So now I'm like the oldest female
yes.
not diagnosed with ADHD. But you explain it as being like fireflies trapped in a glass jar. That's what the inside of your brain is like, and it's never silent. And also, you
Right.
have to say stuff when you make these connections. So now, after 15, 16 years at the show, I can apologize to all the guests who I talked over because I'm like, oh, yeah. And then furthermore, and then they go, wait, that's another question. I didn't answer the first one yet. That's okay. I'm already on to the next one. So this book describes having a brain that's that, I consider it lively, active,
Yes.
connective. But the book as a joyful experience into the life of someone else, not just your brain, but your life and your adventures with dogs, is so deeply moving and times disturbing because it was a, call it an abusive childhood if you will, although this is not running with scissors, but it is
Sure.
because it's wacky, it's Maine, and you often explain things. You say this is how we lived and this is sleeping out with the dogs, and because it was Maine. And there's
Yeah.
something about that makes us feel like, oh, it's a whole nother world, it's another universe. And I am amazed because you mention it several times during the book that this book was published by a British publisher, 5M.
Yes.
And it's so American, Melissa. You are so prototypically American in terms of
Hmm.
pluckiness and honesty and wearing your heart on your sleeve. And at one point, you talk about wearing dogs on your sleeve and even having a tattoo to one of your lost dogs. Why did a British publisher want to publish something so American? And why didn't an American publisher want to? Or do you not know the answer to that?
I don't know the answer to the second. I do know the answer to the first. So in 2023, I was invited to go speak at the Packed Dogs X conference. It was this newer, burgeoning accreditation organization. They also host the Barks from the Bookshelf podcast. So they do a lot of book interviews with Trisha McConnell, Clive Way, like that, and also indie people like me. So they're super cool. They're a really great group. And I think you would love them. I think you guys would get on like a barn on fire. But they invited me to come and speak for 20 minutes on urban dogs and problems with urban
Oh,
dogs and looking at things from an urban dog lens, which my first book, which you so kindly interviewed me back in 2015
it
about,
was great.
Considerations for the Dog. Thank you. And so I was invited to go speak in the UK, had a great time with them. There was a piece of paper in one of those to go that they give
Yes.
speakers. Piece of paper. The next day, I'm in my hotel room and the fire alarm goes off. And I'm standing there, like just woke up. I'm like, oh no, what do I do? Do I grab my keys? Do I grab my passport? What do I grab? And I grabbed that piece of paper for whatever reason and ran out of the building. leaving all of my things inside. And I'm standing out there in those tank tops that don't really have a bra, but say it's useless. It's not doing anything. It's next door to an all boys academy. So the kids,
Oh,
young men, are in suits and carrying briefcases. And I'm out there in like a Gap top that's not doing anything, pajamas. I look like a hot mess. And I'm holding this piece of paper. When they finally let me back in, I'm like, what? Why did I grab this? And I'm reading it. And it was a call for submissions for books in the dog space. And so I reached
oh,
out in the airport on my way home. I'm like, hey, I've been working on this book for about 10 years. If you're interested. And I sent them a couple chapters. They're like, we want this. And we were actually going to reach out to you because we were at the
I'll
conference.
be
And
darned.
so it was this like universe opening up and just in the most unusual way and in the only possible way. And the thing that I so appreciate about this group 5M is that they did not make me put you in behavior. They did not have me like add the you to color. Like
Oh,
they
right.
let me write as me. And then they would ask questions, and that's where a lot of the footnotes came from. They don't have animal control in the UK. So I had to take a
Right.
footnote and describe what animal control was for the British population. So it was actually a really eye-opening experience for me to see an
Yes.
American through the lens of the UK. And it was just so cool.
For me, the thing that was a joy in the book and why it was such slow reading for me, and I'm like a speed reader, is that
Mhm.
I didn't want to miss anything, even the footnotes. In fact, I would look on a page at the footnotes before I read the page because your footnotes were funny and they had a whole nother take on something. And then I'd go back, oh, what was this a footnote to? They're like a world unto themselves. And they're not footnotes in terms of ibid. I already told you about this scholarly book. It's more like an anecdote. Before we talk more about misadventures of the world's okayest dog trainer and a lot of wisdom that you gained and that you lost and you gained again as ideas changed about dog training and you changed your ideas about dog training, there's an example of why I think people that have, I don't know if anyone who's never had a dog listens to this show. They might. I've been told there are people who do just because I have very interesting, funny, smart guests. If you're one of those people or you've sworn off dogs because your heart's been broken too many times or you
Mm,
travel too much or you're too old, you think, but you're never too old, you got to
agreed.
get this book to just have it's like a long visit with a friend that you just need about 4 or 5 days with to really immerse yourself in her. You can set this up verbally or not. It's basically something from your childhood in Maine with your dad, who was a tough nut and put you through
Mhm.
some ringers, but also has been a devoted dad nonetheless.
This is in the first chapter where I'm trying to set up like how I grew up, which was very unusual. But when I grew up in Maine, that's how people grew up. College, I found out, oh, not everybody had a sled dog team. Not everybody had a dad who bathed themselves in doe urine for hunting. I thought all of this was normal. And then to
Yes.
discover later it wasn't. So here it is on page 10. But my tough guy dad loved dogs. My dad was a corrections officer for a state prison and an Army reservist who taught weaponry at West Point. In his spare time, he taught martial arts classes bathed in doe urine to increase his chances of getting a buck during hunting season. And as a pièce de résistance, he reenacted in the Revolutionary War, knickers and all. He was the embodiment of the 1980s alpha male, donning a thick black mustache, tank tops that showed off his tattooed biceps, and had an entire room in the house dedicated to working out. This room had large posters of big chested women in tiny triangle bikinis and military slogans everywhere. The only surprise in this room was that the infamous kitten hanging from the branch of a tree poster that says, "Hang in there." It was my favorite poster. My brother, on the other hand, preferred the bikini models. And there was a footnote here where it was talking about bathing in doe urine to increase his chances at getting a buck during hunting season. This did not work. He would get his annual deer from the game warden if one was poached, or he would hit one every few years with his Toyota. Either way, there was at least once a year where we'd get off the bus to a deer carcass in the barn or in the driveway because Maine.
I just can't tell you how delightful it is because the book, every anecdote has parts where you go, say what? A corrections officer? What he taught? Martial arts and weaponry. What do the British think? They must think we're all just crazy. But this was Maine, and there's a lot of parts of America where this is how people live. And maybe
Yeah.
they get their deer with their Toyota. Just because he was good with a gun doesn't mean that the Toyota didn't work as well. When you called it the world's okayest dog trainer, which is obviously not only grammatically odd, but
Mhm.
also eye-catching because it's extra humility, if you will. I'm sure you're really amazing. Reading the book, I'm like, I really want to hang out with her and see how much cooler my own dogs would be doing backflips with a disc thing. You talk about that. Why is the word okayest there?
So the word okayist was actually very intentional.
Oh, yeah.
Um, I wanted to present myself like I knew that this was going to be a lot of me.
Yes.
And saying like we all get into this, and there's a lot of conversation in the book about Dunning-Kruger effect, about like
Mm-hmm.
how when you first start knowing something, you think you know all the things. The longer you are immersed in a subject, the more you realize you don't know anything,
Yes.
right? And that kind of humbleness. And so what I wanted to really convey was like this humble, like, I don't have all the answers here. I am doing my best. And I think a lot of people can relate to that. And the dog peeing in the cup, that's actually my dog Captain. This was illustrated by Lily Chin, who does a lot of the
Yes, she's
dog
great.
posters. So I can't believe she would be willing to almost bury her career by trying this, but she did. And that's my dog Captain peeing into a cup. And it was like to give the idea of the world's best mom or world's best
Right.
dog trainer, like the world's best whatever, but to be a little bit more honest about it. So that's why I picked that word. Yeah.
Okay, so the book is intended, but that's just maybe at some point you said, okay, never mind. Forget my intention. I'm going to tell every story that's in my heart and in my head. But it's supposed to be for other dog trainers, those who have practiced for decades like you, those who are considering it, those who have started and they've got either they're in the part where I know everything or the part where, why did I even do this? This must be a bad idea.
Right.
Do you see this as being more for dog trainers or dog owners? Really?
Oh, that's a great question. I think I'll answer that maybe with a short anecdote if that's cool.
Oh yeah, the book is
Awesome.
all cool anecdotes.
Great. So, did you ever read Nick Trout's I'll Be Home Soon? He's a veterinarian from Angel Memorial.
Yes.
I think he wrote this in the 90s.
Yes.
And I remember reading that like just when I was starting in dog training and thinking I really wish there was a behind the scenes like more realistic view of what this work is. There's a lot of people talking about how to dog train or the best technique or how to raise a perfect puppy or how to do this or how to do that, but there's very little in this space about what our day-to-day looks like or could look like or the kinds of cases that we might just be thrown into. And I wanted to do that for our industry. So I was not yet a dog trainer when I read that book. And it gave me a behind the scenes look. And at the time, I was working in an animal hospital. And
Yes.
so I thought that this was a really cool way to show general public what this is, also to relate to people who are proverbially in the shit, just to be like, hey, I see you, you see me. We've all been through the dog who swallowed underwear. We made them vomit it. We hand it to the girlfriend and she's, those aren't mine. I wanted to have that for dog trainers and behaviorists, but also people who are just curious about what it is we do all day, because
Yeah.
like they all think we love dogs. And as Trisha McConnell always says, like just dancing in a field of golden retriever
Right.
puppies.
Right.
That's our whole job, but that's
Right.
not at all.
Right.
Yeah.
In fact, in the trenches, the way you tell it, it's not gruesome or gory. Oh, there's moments where it's ay, ay, ay. It's mostly hilarious the way you tell it. In fact, speaking of Patricia McConnell, who was on the show recently with her first novel, which is a great book, Away to Me, it's called.
So good.
So good, right?
Yes.
And her book, The Other End of the Leash, is really famous for anyone who's been interested in dog training for a long time. And you have one of your many throwaways in the book, throwaway anecdotes or lines. You said, oh, yeah, when I first was going to be a dog trainer, I bought, and then you mentioned these 4 books, the seminal books, including End of the Leash. And you said, I bought them all. And 4 years later, I read them when I had to do my test. It's like you're so honest about stuff. But the humor is subtle. which I'm sure the British particularly appreciate. It's
I hope so.
laugh out loud funny, at least for me, who doesn't laugh out loud, because it comes from left field sometimes and when you
Yeah.
least expect it. Now, there's a chapter on humping, very funny, about how you explain the bull penis, or
Yes.
the also known as the pizzle and so forth, and a little girl in a class. But you do come across, if this is how you still feel, as
Mhm.
saying that intact males should probably be neutered if you find them humping a lot or even once. Is that what you actually believe? Because just a
Oh,
disclosure, I'm a big proponent of keeping dogs intact at all
sure.
times when you can manage it well.
Sure. So like as my perspective has changed over many things over my
Yes,
22 years, that's one of them as well. Like when I
yes,
started in the 90s and 2000s, it was more of a this is what we do.
that's
Veterinarians
right.
recommend this, there's a reason for it. But my background is working in shelters and
Right.
working in that industry. And so like my vantage point is a little bit informed by that. But I
Mm-hmm.
think as long as somebody and this is I think the best way to approach it, as long as somebody has their dog and they know where to go for questions relating to, and I said this in considerations for the city dog, where they go for medical advice, which a neuter would be, they should go to their vet and have that conversation with a vet who they feel like they're on the same page about, that is maybe up to date on the latest science and research, and have that conversation with that healthcare professional. In the shelters, it's a little bit different because you don't want a homeless pet
Right.
making more homeless pets
Of
or like being
course.
used for backyard breeding. So like
Yep.
it's a little bit different there. But in general, if you have the option to neuter, spay, or not, my hope is that people go and have that conversation with somebody who's knowledgeable about the best research in keeping an intact animal or not, depending on their health, their behavior, their physique, their preferences, whatever. Yeah.
Well, that's interesting because to me, and I just bring this up as often as I
Yeah.
can with
Yeah.
really smart, knowledgeable people so people can hear what other people say back to me when I feel very firmly that the research
Yeah.
has shown, going back about 20 years, that an
Hmm.
intact male is emotionally more stable, more confident,
Yes.
and physically will have lower joint problems and growth problems and cancer.
And
And that's
especially in
being
those larger breed dogs where
which
that is
happens to be
even
my
more
choice.
important.
Yeah, that's my choice of dogs. Is large to me. A dog is like almost the size of a small pony when possible. That's just my preference. But in a way, saying ask your vet, and I'm just saying this as just a conversation, not a debate
Oh, sure, sure,
necessarily.
sure.
It's like saying, oh, go to your vet and ask them what to feed your dog. Okay, no, because the vast majority of vets have maximum 10 to 12 to 15 minutes for the appointment. They're not going to have a big old conversation about these various brands and the dog's poop and what's better for them and what's affordable and where do the ingredients come from. It's not their job any more than people go to their human cardiologist and say, who's going outside for a smoke sometimes, the doctor, what shall I feed my children for lunch or myself? It's just not their job to know that. The same thing with, honestly, gynecologists, for women to go to them
Yeah.
and say, shall I have hormone replacement therapy? That's a burgeoning field in which the vast
Hmm.
majority will say, oh, no, no, there's risks to that. So the same thing with the neutering and keeping dogs intact. You also talk about being at dog shows where all the dogs are intact because it's
Hmm.
necessary if you're going to be shown. And you haven't seen a whole lot of, forget aggression, because that's just a misunderstanding. You haven't seen a whole lot of
Correct.
humping there, right? I mean, people
Generally,
just
no. Yeah.
interrupt the humping. And these are dogs
Yeah.
who some of them get to hump for a living. Some of them actually are invited to do that and actually paid a few dollars.
They're paid so much money to hump.
It's not as much as a racehorse, but it's certainly something to be encouraged. There are chapters like that where you read it and then you think, okay, but she's evolving as a person
Hmm.
and as a professional. So read on and see if later, 4, 5, 10 chapters later, does some of that change somehow?
Hmm.
Because a lot of vets will say, oh, you don't want an intact male because they'll mark everywhere. One of my vets actually said that. I said, oh, you neutered your large breed male golden, the most targeted dog, if you will, for cancer. He said he was marking in the office. Okay,
There's
but
other ways around it.
there are ways around that.
There's other
So,
ways around that.
do
Yeah.
you want to remove all those hormones and all of the ways that it helps their brain and their personality evolve?
Hmm.
Again, choices, but maybe
Yeah.
it's hard. A lot of the decisions are hard. Now,
Yes.
the training choices, you bring up all kinds of anecdotes about training choices. You have the Gertie and Gussie and the whole
Oh
issue about
yeah.
crating. And you're talking about
Hmm.
these people are adamant they've got to crate your dog. As a dog trainer and the author of this book, do you feel that you often come up against people with absolute ideas? This dog must heal, exactly. Or the dog has to come and then sit in front of me. Otherwise, it's not a real come. What do you do about
Correct.
people with these set ideas that they've learned from somewhere that isn't the real world?
Good question. I am faced with that every day, every single day. My dog has to do this. My dog has to
Yes.
do that. And then I ask them why.
Mm-hmm.
What function is this going to serve? Not in a demeaning
No,
why,
no, just
but in a
why?
curious, just
Yes,
super curious, and just really make them think about the why they're asking for
yes,
something. There's
yes,
this movement now about not forcing dogs to sit every
yes.
time, like, right? And
I
I'm sure
love
you've talked
that.
about this. And when people are like, my dog has to sit every time we get to a crosswalk, and it's why? Are they, for some dogs who are super jumpy, sometimes asking that dog to sit just adds one extra step that you
Yes,
can mate like an Aussie Shepherd, maybe who's Tigger the Tiger on amphetamines, who cannot sit still. Having that dog sit might be really useful for that owner to have an extra
yes.
fraction of a second to be able to like
For
help that
safety.
dog.
Yeah.
Yes. But for most part, I have the opposite end of the spectrum in my home right now from the dogs that you have, the biggies. I have a pound and a half Chihuahua puppy that
No. Oh,
um it
Dios mío.
it was a moment of weakness and something that I never ever thought I would do. But I can't ask him to sit. He's this big and my hand is 5 times his size. So every time I bring my hand up, he thinks Godzilla and he runs away.
Yes,
So this is not something that is going to be useful for him. But getting him to target to my one finger because of everything
yes,
is super useful. I can get him to climb up into my lap so I can pick him up on his choice. So that way I don't
yes,
just like yeet him up into the sky and
yes.
make him afraid of hands. Like when I'm looking at the individual dog in front of me, I need to think of that training plan, think of the person, think about what function they're trying to serve. Do they take their dog to the dog park because they have to or because the dog likes it? Which one is it? And sometimes it's both, but sometimes it's not.
So you're saying that it's really about being specific to the dog in front of you. You can't teach a little tiny dog to sit because it's the world's still really scary to him.
Correct. Like, so there are no absolutes. Like, there are always reasons for a behavior from an animal's perspective, and we need to think of it that way too. Like, there's a reason for us asking them to do a
Yes,
behavior, right? And is this for
yes.
safety? In that case, it might be that must be the must. But if it's not for safety, we can really start to look at the individual and say, what behavior would be better suited for this particular animal for whatever reason.
And for my
Yeah.
lifestyle as an owner. I mean,
Yes.
that's what's interesting. The other thing, and we only have a couple of minutes left, is that in Misadventures of the World's Okayest Dog Trainer, you do talk about a lot of situations that wouldn't occur to us as owners, where you go into a house and you feel unsafe, where there's
Hmm.
sexism and
Hmm.
attitudes that are uncomfortable or awkward,
Yeah.
those kind of situations, and then you go back and talk about your childhood and some of the situations that these situations could trigger for you, but we don't
Hmm.
have to have had a harsh father who'd been a corrections officer kind of treating you that way to understand
Right.
why you don't want dogs to be trained that way. But
Right.
you explain it in the context of who you are. And I think
Hmm.
that as a book for other dog trainers, everyone has to acknowledge who they are, not just who the dog
Hmm.
is, but who are they as a trainer
Yeah.
and what's comfortable for them and what kind of people do they want to work with. And maybe there's people and dogs they don't want to work with, right? I mean, you have a dog fight chapter. There's lots of
Yeah.
situations where you say, I'll just decline. Have you
Yep.
done
I
that?
think I'm out.
Yeah, I think that I'm
Yes.
good here. You don't have to pay
Out.
me. You don't have to pay me. I'll just get my car keys. Have you done that
Just-
ever? Started with someone and
yeah.
thought, no, this is never going to go well.
Yes. I definitely, this was not in the book, but I had definitely been in a class with, or in a private session with a gentleman who was he wasn't particularly large, but I was just getting real creep vibes,
Mm-hmm.
and I kind of like bucked down and just kind of got through that lesson. And then I was like, I think I'm going to have to refer you to somebody else. And it wasn't because of my expertise. It wasn't because I didn't
Yes.
think I could help the dog. I just didn't feel safe in that house, by myself with that particular person. Now I've
Yes.
been in rooms with men way larger than I am, way more, maybe even violent. Like, but I knew that beast. I know how to
Yes.
handle that, and I'm
Yes.
very comfortable in that room. But, like, there's just the creep vibes from that house. I was like, "Something's off, and I don't want to find out what it is."
So I think really what you're saying and what the book shows us about you and should help other people on either side of the learning curve is
Mhm.
trust your gut, trust your
Yes.
instinct. And if you feel that there's danger from the dog or from the human or just
Mhm.
discomfort, life's too short. Someone else
Yeah,
may not get that vibe at all. So
exactly.
we all need to feel that way. And particularly if you have a dog trainer come who comes with the harsh, let me hang your dog from this leash because that's what the
Mhm.
monks of Newski said to do 50 years ago. You're like, no, that's okay. I'm
Good.
sorry you want to do that. Please don't do it to anybody else. And sure as heck, you may leave now because you're not doing this to my French poodle, right?
Right?
Melissa,
And if I was gonna say,
sorry.
if the monks wanna show me how to make Trappist beer, I'm all in, but they probably should, like, stay out of dog training.
They've changed. They've changed. I mean, I've read their more recent books and talked to one of them. They've changed, but I think
Oh, good.
there's something kind of about a silent monkery, if you will. I know it's really
Monkery.
monastery, that it probably affects the way you're a dog trainer. Misadventures of the world's okayest dog trainer, Melissa McCue McGrath. You're going to have to come from Maine to Bennington, Vermont. We're going to have to hang out. And you can see how unruly my dogs are, and we're both going to be okay with it. I
We're
mean,
gonna be fine with it. We're gonna be so good with it.
yeah,
Not
because
even
they're
fine, we're gonna be
happy.
so good.
We're going to be happy that they can be dogs. And if they want to dig in the middle of the lawn, that's what shovels are
Brilliant.
for. Thank you
Yes.
so much for this delightful book. It's really a treasure. Take
Thank
care, and I
you.
hope to see you in person soon.
You will. Thank you.
Bye bye.